Hello everyone, welcome back to the Ready Set Life YouTube channel. As always, my name is Brittany and I am a financial coach who makes videos all about taking the fear out of finance so that you can live the rest of your life. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and if you like this video, make sure to give it a like and share it with a friend so that they can get something awesome out of it as well. So today is going to be part 2 of how to make your first budget. If you haven't watched part 1, I'll link it in the cards above and in the description below because you should definitely watch that before you watch this video, else you will be very confused about what we're talking about. So go watch that video first. Alright, so now that you've watched all of that previous video, we can get right into where we left off with our budget. It's a different day. Can you tell? I'm wearing a different outfit. So this is where we've left off. We've kind of created our budget from here. And today we're going to figure out how to categorize those expenses and then go through how to actually deal with them and kind of reconcile it with your paycheck and how to go about it on a day-to-day basis. So if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, what I like to do is, if you've watched my mistakes that you're making with your finances video, you'll know that I like to categorize my expenses into 3 different categories. So the first category is recurring expenses, and these are all your bills. So like your mortgage or your like cell phone bill or anything that kind of comes on a regular basis and is generally the same amount every time that it comes. Sometimes like a utility bill, for example, will be like a little fluctuating depending on if you're in the wintertime or in the summertime, things like that. But if it comes on like a specific date, then it goes in that category. Then there's a second category, and that's day-to-day spending. So that's anything that you kind of swipe your debit card for. That can be like groceries or gas or like if you just go down to the corner store and get a drink or something, or like you go out to the movies or something like that, that's all in your day-to-day spending category. And then the third category is your non-recurring or random accounts. And these are things that you don't pay for on kind of a daily basis, but there's still things that need to be in your budget. For example, like gifts for Christmas or birthdays, or like if you get your hair cut like once every 3 months or like something like that. Anything that we need to like think about, but it's not necessarily on your top of your mind every day. This could also include things like repair accounts. So if you want to you should be saving for like vehicle repairs and things like that, kind of those like oopsie costs. Those are all under your like non-recurring accounts. So now we're going to go through and look at our budget and each of our expenses and then put them into these categories and kind of color code them so we know we can keep track of which category they're in. So the first one we're going to do is our recurring expenses. And this is going to be kind of this like turquoisey green color. So our first one is our mortgage. And that is a payment that comes out every month. So we're going to color that with the recurring payments color. And then the same thing with the cell phone. We're going to do that as well. And let's see if there are any other recurring payments. So all of these are going to be recurring payments. Okay, and then that looks like that is it for the recurring payments. Then we're going to go through and do it again with the day-to-day and the same thing with the non-recurring. Okay, so now that you can see the colors here, so the green ones, remember, are day-to-day spending, and the kind of bluey turquoise ones are the regular bills, and then these purple ones are going to be our recurring or non-recurring and random expenses. So now that you've got all of those done, the second thing that you're going to do is you're going to take everything that is a reoccurring expense, so all of the things that you've just colored that turquoisey blue color, and you're going to list them out by due date. So whenever they come out of your account, you're going to list those out. So for example, here are all the things here that come out by that date, and you can see that I have a lot of kind of random dates. What you're going to want to do is order them by their due date in like ascending order. And then you can see that all of these payments here are going to be done using our second paycheck because we want to make sure that they're paid before they come out. And the second list here is the ones that are going to be paid for by our first paycheck. Now, if you have weekly paychecks, for example, you're going to want to break those into like 4 different categories, or one for each week. But I'm just kind of doing, again, the bi-weekly example, but you can kind of make it work with whatever your system is for income. Okay, so then you're going to go to the paycheck breakdown tab, and that's how we're going to organize all the different categories together. So in our paycheck breakdown tab, this is what it's going to look like. So you're going to have a section here in the blue, and that's for to set it out by month, basically. And then you'll see the first paycheck and the second paycheck. So if we get paid, let's say on the 15th and the 30th, or the 28th, I guess, because it's February. Then first thing that you're gonna do is put your paychecks in there. And then you can see things start to calculate here. So it's already kind of calculating out how much you have left from each paycheck, because we haven't actually put any expenses in here yet. So the second thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to take that bill breakdown that you had, and you're going to put it in that other sheet. So for example, these ones here, remember we said they were going to be paid with the second paycheck. So we're going to put them in here. We're going to go to the second paycheck spot and just paste them right in. And the same thing with these ones that are paid by the first paycheck. The next thing you have to do is make all these numbers negative, because they're actually coming out of the account. Okay, so now you can see that it is kind of calculating, and this is your amount left after paying those from that paycheck. So then the third thing that you're going to do is you're going to go up and see this category, this day-to-day spending category. You're going to want to make that something that you take out of your paycheck for those specific 2 weeks. So for example, let's go all the way up and look for those green lines and just put them here so we can remember what they are. Okay, I think that might be it for our cash. So this is what you have monthly to spend on your items here. So there are 2 ways that you can do this. You can either take it out in cash, which I do highly recommend, especially if you are doing this for the first time, or you're trying to kind of rein in your spending a little bit. Cash can really help with that. It kind of makes your spending a little more physical, so that you actually can see, okay, I'm giving money away for something instead of just swiping a card. But the second way that you can do it, if you do a lot of online shopping, for example, that cash might not work for you. And we are living in the 21st century, so cash doesn't work for everybody, which I understand. So the second thing that I recommend to do is to have a spending account. So you're going to get like another checking account, and you're going to put in that amount from every paycheck, basically. And that's going to be your account that you can spend from. So then you're going to be able to see, like, check in on your phone or whatever, and you'll be able to see like what is actually in that account and what you can spend. And that way you're not like nickel and diming every little purchase, or like trying to stay within like too many categories. For this example, we have groceries and eating lunches that are in eating out or lunches that are in that category. So we're going to take those, for example, the groceries, and that's our monthly amount, right? So we're going to take that and we're going to just divide it by 2 to get our paycheck amount. And then the same thing with our lunches, and we're going to divide that by 2. Then we're just going to total it together so that we know that we have $155 that goes into that account every 2 weeks. So the first thing I'm noticing is that this number is a little bit low. And if you remember in our groceries example, I'm actually sharing groceries with Alex. So that's actually part of why this number is pretty low, because there's another half of it that that I haven't really calculated for. And then for the eating out lunches area, because I was preparing for the transition of becoming an entrepreneur and not having a full-time job anymore, a lot of that was really pulled back. So that's why it's quite low. And that's not a bad thing. If your numbers turn out like this, that's totally fine. A lot of people are really good at like disciplining themselves, basically, or they just don't really have a lot of spending, and that's okay too. But I would say that it's often really difficult to kind of make yourself turn into that person, especially if your tendency is to kind of spend on normal things, if your lifestyle isn't quite like that. So I would say that kind of stick to, if your budget comes out like this, and you think that that's correct, I would stick to it. That's totally fine. But part of this process is checking in with yourself. If, for example, the end of the pay period comes along and you used all your money in the very first 3 days and you're getting really stressed out about it and you're ending up overspending and not really sticking to this budget, that's something to reassess. So you're going to have to go back to kind of the very first step, that older video, and work through all of your expenses and actually see like what is causing the issue there. But that's just something that you might run into, and that's kind of where the accountability for yourself kind of comes into play. And again, it seems like pretty easy to, or I guess not easy, but it seems straightforward when I'm saying it in this video, in this tutorial, but it does really take a lot of work after the fact. It's not just a set up and kind of forget it thing, or like it's always going to work the first time. You really have to play around with it afterwards. But that being said, going back to the tutorial here, if your number is $155 for 2 weeks, I would say that that's not quite normal. So I would say that it's usually around like $2 to $250, and that's totally fine. If your number is higher than that, great. If your number is lower than that, it's all good. It's all just whatever your lifestyle is. But I just didn't want anybody to like see that number and be like, oh my gosh, I'm way overspending, because you're not. This is kind of a example of like a tighter budget, I guess. So going back to the tutorial, if we take that number now, and so we've decided that we're going to spend $100 per paycheck for groceries and $55 per paycheck for eating out. And so now we're going to go to our non-recurring and random expenses. So these are all of the purple expenses in our Excel here. All right, so now we have all of our non-recurring and random expenses down here, just to kind of keep track of them for now. And the way that we deal with these is that we're going to make savings accounts for each one. And I know you're going to think it's nuts, so just bear with me here. A lot of people are like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of savings accounts. And it is, but let me tell you why we do this. So for example, clothing. Not a lot of people buy clothing on a weekly basis or even on a regular basis. So if you, for example, buy clothing like once a season or something like that, and you spend like a larger amount of money, like say like $200 or $300 on clothing, that's kind of the typical schedule of clothing purchases. So it can be really difficult to build that into a budget, especially if you're budgeting on like a monthly basis or a paycheck basis kind of thing. So what we're doing here is we're taking a smaller amount and we're setting that aside. So it's a recurring expense. We've given it kind of a job in our budget, and we're not forgetting about it, but we're taking it aside and not having it affect the rest of our budget. So for example, when that time comes along and you go to pay for that $200, $300 purchase, you're going to be able to look at that account and say, hey, I have like this $325 in that account to spend on this purchase. And then you stay within that amount. And this is a really good time to use like credit cards and things like that, because you'll be able to swipe it in the store and then kind of go on your phone immediately after and just switch the amount from the savings account to pay off the credit card. So there's not actually like a balance ever on the credit card. And then it keeps everything all settled. So it doesn't like mess up the rest of your budget when you go to pay for these items. You've already like set it aside kind of thing. And another thing that might help you with this is kind of like grouping some of these expenses together. So for example, like pet food and supplies and vet bills, they're both kind of pets. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to like group that together and make it a pet expense. And then we'll just have one account that's labeled like the pet account. Some people might also want to kind of group like personal grooming or like makeup together. I kind of like to keep it separate because like personal grooming to me is like haircuts versus makeup and skincare is like my Sephora purchases kind of thing. But again, whatever kind of works for you or whatever you kind of want to label them. You're going to just want to make sure that there are no fees for any of those accounts. So a lot of There's a lot of banks that have no fee accounts, and those are things like in Canada, like Tangerine is a good one, or in the States, it's like Capital One 360, I think, has some accounts that are no fee. And every bank has kind of a nicknaming system. So when you go through and you make all these accounts, make sure that you're nicknaming it whatever the title of this category is, or something fun to make you remember, like that's what that is for. Like you could name it like the name of your pet or something like that. So the way that we build these into our budget is we go over to the paycheck breakdown section. So I'm going to take probably about half of them and copy them into the paycheck tab. And remember, we're going to make them negative. And then once we've done that, it comes to a little bit of like playing around. So depending on how loaded your month is with your recurring expenses is how these are going to break down. So you can see by this breakdown here, the amount left actually is positive on both ends, and that's what you want. But say, for example, we had accidentally put this one in this one. That would make that a negative balance, and that's not a good thing. So then you'd have to kind of play around with it to see like what would bring that up to a positive level. So once those numbers are positive, that is your budget. One thing that you're going to want to make sure that you do is check the total expense category and make sure that it matches with your total expense category for here, which actually we're $10 off. So let's see what I forgot to put in. What I forgot to put in was the Presto card, because that is $10. And I didn't even make it a color. That's why you check your work, because you don't know. And I'm just going to add it to this one here, Presto savings account. Okay. So once you kind of have this settled out, then you can kind of copy it for the rest of time. Maybe not the rest of time, but like the rest of the year, for example, would be nice. So the way that we do that is just copy paste, basically. So you can just copy it and then paste it. And then if you want to copy paste like for the end of time, then you're going to copy the whole month. So that is the budget breakdown. So every month starts to look the same from here. So your first paycheck comes in, then your bills are paid, then you take out your cash, then you put the rest of your money in your savings account, and then exactly the same thing happens for the second paycheck. You get your bills paid, then you take out your cash, or you put it into your spending account, and then you save for your bills there. It kind of goes on autopilot from there. Well, I shouldn't say autopilot, because that leads you to believe that you shouldn't ever check it again. I will say that you will probably have to check this, especially at the beginning. You're going to have to rework it a lot. A lot of people forget expenses that they have, or they'll kind of estimate things incorrectly, and they'll have to play around with some stuff. Especially with your like entertainment costs and things like that. A lot of people think that they spend less on that and end up having trouble with the spending account, and it's too little for them. Or even on the opposite end of it, sometimes people will overestimate it and they'll actually be spending a lot less, and then they'll have a lot of money left over all the time. So if those kind of things start to become patterns, then that's kind of a sign to like reassess the rest of it. So you will probably have to go through a lot and work with this tab and just kind of like change around the numbers in here so that they'll like work with your lifestyle. So what you say at the beginning is almost never what actually ends up happening in practice. And you do have to kind of play around with it a little bit to see if it works. But once you get it down, then it's very easy from there, and it makes things a lot calmer for you, and it makes things a lot more scheduled and routine, so that you can kind of, not that you don't have to worry about this at all, but it's a lot easier and less stressful if you know what's happening, versus like not having a plan at all. I hope that made sense to you. and I'm sure that I filmed an outro, so we're gonna go to that. All right, so that is a lot of information. How are you feeling? Overwhelmed, exhausted? Yeah, that's totally normal, don't worry. There should also be kind of a sense of pride and accomplishment in this. I know that it's a lot of information, but especially if it's your first time doing this, or if you've never really stuck to anything or did this much work on your finances before, it can be a huge thing that you just did. You made a financial plan for the rest of the year. And I'm not saying that you're not going to have to look at it again. Actually, in the next few months, you'll probably have to reassess it a few times before you get something that sticks. But what you did right here today, that's a major starting point. So give yourself a moment to just be happy and proud of what you did. I'm proud of you. Giving a virtual high five right now. See this hand? Don't leave me hanging. Let me know in the comments down below if you have followed through with this tutorial and what questions that you have for me about it. If you are totally confused about anything, or you think that you need extra help in putting all of this together, please let me know. I am available for hire on an individual basis. I take people through this process all the time, so don't be shy. There are definitely people out there just like you who need, some extra help and some accountability in this process. It can seem really easy when it's, in a video like this, but when you're actually doing it, it can be really frustrating in practice if it's not working for you. So if this is you, I will leave my email down below so we can connect, and please do give me a call. So until next time, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of my new videos. If you like this video, remember to give it a like and share it with a friend. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye!